The Olive Matthews collection at Chertsey Museum incorporates over 6,000 items of men's, women's and children's dress and accessories dating from around 1600 to the present day. Although it has strengths in many areas, the collection is particularly known for its high-quality 18th and early 19th century holdings. Here I would like to focus on a beautiful dove grey three-piece man's dress suit dating from between 1780 and 1788. It was part of the original group of items carefully collected by Miss Olive Mary Matthews during her lifetime. For more information about Olive Matthews and her collection, you can go to www.chertseymuseum.org/fashion. This beautiful man's suit is a rare survival. It has come down to us in almost pristine condition and consists of matching coat, waistcoat and breeches. Made from grey-ribbed silk and embroidered with trailing flowers and swags, all the pieces are lined with ivory silk and natural linen, which was normal practice for high-quality garments of the 18th century. The linen was selected for its durability and also because it was effective at wicking away moisture from the body, thus protecting the expensive silk from sweat damage. Such a suit would have been commissioned and made to measure for a specific individual, now sadly unknown to us. And as you look at the images, it is important to bear in mind that it has been entirely hand-stitched and hand-embroidered. It may have been owned by a wealthy Englishman, or it may have been French in origin, as highly decorated suits were more commonly worn by Frenchmen at this time. Unless attending very significant events, late 18th century English gentlemen generally wore quite plain outfits in subdued colours, with the emphasis on fine tailoring and quality fabrics rather than lavish decoration. Let's begin by looking at the coat. This is cut to produce an elegant line and has a fashionably high stand-up collar. Collars of this sort first began to be added to coats from the 1760s, when they were quite modest in size. They gradually became taller, as seen here, but they were to rise further, reaching their highest point in the 1790s, when they sometimes even crept above the jawline, after which time they tumbled downwards, developing a fold to create the more familiar double or rolled collar from around 1800. This 1806 fashion plate from the magazine Costume Parisien shows a coat with a rolled collar. Another new style development is evident in the streamlined nature of the coat fronts. In keeping with tailoring techniques of the time, they are still cut in one with the body of the coat, that is, without a waist seam. They curve away to the back so that the skirts have almost transformed into tails. This creates a slender silhouette, which imitates the simpler cut of men's more practical riding coats, incidentally the source from which this new narrower fashion had evolved. The back of the coat has 3 vents with pleats. The 2 side pleats include twisted thread to hold them in place, 3/4 of the way down. The skirts were designed to drape elegantly when the wearer was on horseback. The vent also provided a space for a dress sword to be slipped through. The pleats are surmounted by large wooden fabric-covered hip buttons, and there are 2 generous shaped pocket flaps with buttons beneath. These and the buttons along the edge of the coat fronts are purely decorative, as they have no corresponding buttonholes. The coat is closed edge to edge at the centre with hooks and eyes, the highest of which may be original. Others may be later replacements or added afterwards. Metal hooks were used to fasten men's clothing from at least as early as the Middle Ages. However, hooks and eyes were not generally seen in women's dress until the early 19th century. Fastenings for female clothing up until this time tended to be tied tapes or pins. The long narrow sleeves have been cut to shape, following the curve of the arm, and are set in relatively low beneath the narrow sloping shoulder line. The sleeves also have turned back cuffs with 3 decorative buttons. Cuffs of this sort had been a feature of men's dress coats since the 1600s, though the fashion had, by the 1780s, reached its last few decades, and the size of the cuff was less generous than it had been during the middle of the 18th century. The breeches have wide full fronts and 4 pockets. There is a buckle at the back of the waistband for adjustment of fit. As with all 18th century breeches, the fabric is generously gathered at the back of the waistband. Here a separate panel has been inserted to allow room to sit down. In keeping with the fashionably streamlined silhouette, the breeches are long and quite tight and narrow on the legs, with 5 buttons fastening the knee vents. And the knee bands feature buttonholes below the knee. Sadly, the buttons themselves have not survived. The sleeveless and collarless waistcoat is cut away at the lower edge to reveal the front of the breeches. It has 2 functioning hip pockets with pocket flaps, and each features 3 embroidered buttons. In common with all waistcoats of the period, the expensive silk fabric has been used only where it was intended to be seen, that is, on the waistcoat fronts. The back is of practical and functional natural linen. The suit has been hand embroidered with delicately coloured silks in an attractive floral design, with rosebuds, roses and other small flowers and swags using tambourwork stitches. In addition to the work on the garment itself, each button, no matter how small, also includes a rosebud in its centre. Tambourwork is an intricate chain-stitch embroidery done with a small metal hook like a miniature crochet hook. The technique was introduced into Europe from India in the 1760s. The fabric to be embroidered was stretched over a frame and the hook passed through the fabric in order to draw a loop of silk thread up onto the surface to form a tiny chain. The intricate and deftly stitched embellishment on this suit was undoubtedly done by a professional embroiderer, possibly in a French embroiderer's workroom. But tambour work also became a genteel pastime for wealthy women who were sometimes depicted with their circular tambour frames. This suit was intended for formal occasions, and the lightness of the silk and delicate floral decoration may hint at the possibility that it was worn by a young bridegroom for his wedding. It comes under the category of full dress, though the lack of gold or silver decoration mean that it does not quite reach the lofty heights of court dress, as seen in this fashion plate from a 1777 edition of the Magazine à la Mode. The fashion plate is helpful, however, in that it shows us the various accessories that are likely to have been worn with full dress. These include a powdered wig with black silk wig bag, a chapeau bras or bicorn hat which was folded and carried under the arm, a dress sword, white silk stockings and shoes with ornate buckles. A fine linen cravat, wrapped around the neck and tied in a knot at the centre front, was also necessary. Further lace flounces might have been added to the cuffs and neck edges of the linen chemise worn under the waistcoat. This suit would have been a costly purchase. The silk is of the highest quality, and the embroidery, which is extremely fine, was time-consuming to complete. A suit of this sort might have cost around £8 or more once the purchase of fabric and labour of making was taken into account. This may sound like a small sum, but it was not. It should be understood in the context of wages at the time. A domestic servant might only expect to earn about £2 or £3 a year. According to consumer price inflation data, the modern equivalent of £8 in the 1780s is about £1,200. So this was in fact a significant outlay. Clothing was a far larger proportion of most people's expenditure in the 18th century than it is today. It is clear that this expensive and very stylish suit has been made to a high standard and was intended to be worn on a special occasion. It has survived in remarkably good condition, the crisp silk and the intricate embroidery making it an excellent example of its type. It is unsurprising, therefore, to discover that it was a particular favourite of Olive Matthews.